once again to everyone. It's been a while since I uploaded to this channel, and damn, I've missed uploading some racing content. It's round 2 of the BUKC Club 100 iRacing Winter Championship, where we essentially get unleashed with a load of fixed setup Formula Fords or FF1600s, with all of us in class categories. I'm intermediate, shown off by the green hoop, and we essentially race 3 25-minute races around different popular tracks. Now I hear you asking immediately, round 2? What happened to round 1? And all I'll say is, you don't need to worry, it's not important. All I'll say is, I enjoyed seeing the pits a lot during that event and didn't want to bore you with an hour of pit footage. Also, it wasn't my fault. I will show you my one good move during it, so here you go. This is the one best moment I had during the whole event.
Cut here to battle over 13th place. Seb Algieri ahead of Matt Salmon and John Adey recovering behind them. Watch corner. Is there going to be a look here from Matt Salmon? He's gone to the inside, and he's going to be, no, that's perfectly judged on getting by there. That was a beautiful move from Matt Salmon, textbook for how you get through at Lodge Corner.
Indeed.
Round 2, however, we go to the beautiful Japan and the fantastic track of Okayama, which I've never driven before, but it's now one of my favourites. Fast sweeping corners, long straights for slipstreams, slow speed, hard braking zones, and lots of room for close racing. It was an absolute blast, and before going into the races, I felt confident that this was going to be a strong one for me. I had been practicing for days before and was setting regular times within the 138s and the 139s, which I personally felt was good for our fixed full fuel cars. But it was time for the race night and to see how well it could go. My main aim was to keep it clean and just do well in the races, both in the overall result but also in the intermediate category. So it was time to dive into the practice and see how fast people really were. And logging into the session, I was immediately stunned with the lap times on my screen. The top 7 were in the low to mid 137s, and I just knew I was absolutely screwed. Well, that's what I thought at first, but to be fair, some of the people in this category are seriously close to professional sim racers. I mean, Josh Ladd here is an actual Williams esports driver, so it was always good to get some perspective. I wouldn't be racing these guys at the top at all, really, but if I could get within 1 second of it, I would be extremely happy. And after the practice session, just doing lap after lap to make sure I don't make mistakes and get used to the track's temperature, I was able to put in a lap time of 138.7, which was good in my opinion for a solid lap time, and seeing where it put me. Even if I was in practice, I felt confident for qualifying. After 20 minutes of solid running with no mistakes, it was time for qualifying, and my aim was to make it into the top 10 or just outside of it. Maybe 11th or 12th like I did in practice, and I should be able to do it if my practice was a 138.7. Quali is always faster as the track ramps up, so it should be possible. Lap 1 of qualifying went well, and despite being a bit hesitant as the tyres were a bit cold still as I hadn't warmed them properly, I was able to put in a high 139.7, which put me just outside of the top 10, 7 tenths behind Murray Adams, who was a class above me, which was cool but definitely could do better. That said, the top guys were doing the first lap as a full warm-up lap, which was a good idea as it allowed them to really push on lap 2 and 3 and get the best lap time possible. I didn't know about that until after qualifying as I watched back the session on the stream, but it's certainly something to look at in the next round. Next lap came up and I felt more confident on the brakes, and going into turn 1 and the faster bends, there was much more grip this time, so the lap time was going down by a lot, although I was a bit slippy going into some bends, which I think lost me a few tenths as I wasn't able to put the power down quickly. Crossing the line though, I would go on to put in a nice 139.2, which I was still a bit disappointed in as I felt I could have gone a lot faster, but this is where my biggest mistake happened. Last time I raced in the iRacing Championship for Club 100, we got 2 hot laps, and I thought it was the same for this, but I completely missed the white flag in the top left corner and slowed down thinking that was it was my in lap. Yep. Could have easily gone into the 138s, but I stupidly pulled out, and that was it. My fastest quali lap was a 139.2, but it did put me in P14 for the race, which I was really happy with considering. It was definitely a chance to fight for a top 10 finish in the race and challenge for that intermediate podium. But now it was time for race 1, and I really felt like this was the perfect chance to make up for a terrible round 1 on a track I was really enjoying.
That is the end of qualifying. And we'll get ready for the first race of the evening here at Okayama. David Whitehouse, brilliant at Alton Park, starts here at Okayama on row 7. Matt Salmon joins him on that 7th row of the grid. It's a rolling start just like the BUKC in real life, except it's not Elliot Olt in a pro kart at the front of the field. It's random Jeff in a Porsche safety car. But either way, when that safety car pulls into the pits, 25 minutes will be on the clock, and we're having a look at a replay here. What's happening there?
Some kind of crash as they started getting going, Andrew.
Yes, I think there was a problem perhaps for Olavo Castro there.
And yeah, oh boy, I was so wrong. Look, let's be honest here, the first race was a technical nightmare, and I was so disappointed with what happened. For some strange reason, 4 of the cars in front of us during the warm-up just didn't move and blipped out of the lineup, which meant I was so confused and didn't move around them, but one guy did, and heading around to catch up with the leading pack meant I overtook a guy that overtook me, and before I could even get to the start line to race against Matt Hale next to me, I was given a 26-second stop-go penalty for overtaking under yellow, which essentially meant my race was over immediately. But whilst I was going around, I was hoping that there was someone on our server that was capable of taking away black flags for technical problems, and because of that I carried on not serving the penalty. This meant I had a really nice race, staying in P14 for the first lap until 2 drivers took each other out on turn 1, bringing us up to P12 and getting closer to the car in front, allowing me to have a nice battle with James Fremont, another intermediate, and eventually on lap 3 got him into turn 1, being a bit later on the brakes, almost losing the rear but holding him off into the sweeping left-hander, putting myself into P11 and getting closer to a P10 finish, which I actually did for about 2 seconds as someone went off into the grass, but immediately I was disqualified due to not serving the penalty, and that was it. Race was over. I was bottom of the pack, unable to join again, and there was no one who could get me back out there, so I just had to sit in the pits, feeling sorry for myself and moan in the stream's chat. I mean, look at the despair on my face. I mean, I was absolutely fuming, to be fair. Anyways, race 2, I had to start right at the back of the pack next to my teammate from the Daytona 24 Hours, Nathan Maxinim, who also had a bad race in race 1 due to something, probably an incident or something. Actually, he was the one that went off when I went into P10. That was the guy that crashed. But my goal here was to get a good start without being penalized for something completely random, and just avoid any trouble at the start to fight for a few places higher. I definitely had the pace to fight nearer the top of the mid pack. I just had to get past people and avoid any trouble on lap 1. Getting onto the main straight, we got a pretty good start, but I wanted a bit of a gap in case anyone overcooked their brakes and I could think quickly getting around them, which is not actually what happened, as I was more confident on the brakes and went straight down the middle. 2 went off into the gravel ahead, 1 went onto the inside too much and came back on track, and suddenly I hit 2 people in the process, which I didn't feel was my fault at all, but let me know what you think in the comments anyway, because it could have been me. But suddenly and amazingly I was through and we could just keep going. I did get a ×4 though, which was a bit of a pain, and I was also told I had wheel damage, which I thought absolutely brilliant. Race was over once again, but luckily despite having wheel damage the car felt fine to drive and I could catch up to those in front of me pretty well. By this early part in the lap we had passed quite a few cars, as I think Matthew Shawnee went spinning, giving us another position, avoiding the madness of lap 1. Coming up to the hard braking zone we have people weaving all over, and here I just wanted to survive, so I braked early and just watched out in case anyone spun or took anyone else out, and with it someone left the door open as I tried to get a switchback, but it didn't work initially as we went side by side into the next section, leaving each other enough room and then getting a good exit, slipstreaming him and then hard on the brakes, sticking it on the inside on the bend and rolling to the outside, making the overtake stick and putting us up to another spot. This was my favourite place for overtakes, so I knew throughout the race I'd try and do them here if the opportunity arose. But almost immediately after that, going on to the final section of the lap, I almost lose the car completely, going off the track and rejoining in not the most safe fashion, but amazingly kept the position going onto the next lap. And in all fairness, I did get distracted as there were a few cars going into the bend together, throwing dust into the air. With that almost disaster out of the way, I could chase the fighting pack in front, knowing I would get them pretty quickly, but first I had to defend from Cameron Biggs, who was quickly approaching from behind. I was certain he'd get me on the hairpin, but I was lucky enough to hold him off for now, and at the same time close the gap in front. Now onto lap 3, and I'm chasing down Eric Mignon for P14, which, considering I was starting P27 or P25, whatever it was, I thought was a great effort, even if I had technically only done 1 proper overtake. But going into the final sector, I was getting closer and closer, and suddenly Eric spun, using too much throttle on the corner exit, and with that, I was now up to P13 with a nice healthy gap behind and closing in on Antonio Gizzonio in P12. 12. I dropped off of the two battling in front, mainly because I braked so much to avoid the spinning car of Eric, but I was closing in on them, only being 1.7 seconds behind, and with them battling it out, it was making it easier to catch up. I also had a big 2.4 second gap behind, so I had no pressure currently. Getting closer to the next lap, I noticed a puff of dust in the air and thought they'd made a mistake, but getting around the corner, I noticed my good friend John Ady having a major issue as he had a massive crash into the wall, alerting people to go right, which was nice of him. No idea what happened to him. Honestly, you'd have to watch his own video on his channel, which I'll link below, but sad to see him crash out in such a strong position. But it was now P13 for me going on to lap 5. Oh, and also that lap was a 138.7, so we were getting faster and eventually gaining on Antonio. By this point, they were right on each other, which was my perfect opportunity to close the gap and maybe overtake one of them if they make a mistake or get forced wide. That said, I made a huge mistake and almost spun, which cost me 0.8 of a second, which really annoyed me, but still had a nice gap behind, thank God. But going on to lap 7, I'd closed the gap down doing a nice solid 138.5, probably because I was annoyed for making a mistake. They were just a few laps away now from me joining them, and going on to lap 9, we were now within a second. If we had DRS, this would have been job done, but it's Formula Ford, so I had to get them both on pace, which I think was possible, just very difficult. But the gods were in my favour here, as on the long straight going into the hairpin, Matt Hale defending from Antonio overcooks the bend, goes super wide and loses the car, colliding into poor Antonio, which gives me a sweet P11, now trying to close down on David Whitehouse, another teammate during the Daytona 24 hour. But he was almost 6 seconds down the road, so I had to just try and put in some fast laps and see where we get to, and hopefully get into the top 10 somehow. And coming up to lap 11 of 15, not 25 like it implies at the bottom, we somehow go into P10. I think someone DNF'd further up the field, but I have no idea. But there we go, we were in the top 10 after starting last on the grid. Granted, I had a lot of luck, but I'll take everything I can get, and the guys at Double Dash doing the stream were very kind about it as well.
10th for Matt Salmon from the back of the grid as
Good
well.
recovery.
Brilliant drive
Great drive
from Matt Salmon.
Not much happened after this, sadly. Our pace was consistently in the 138s, with my fastest being 138.3, which is my fastest lap on this circuit, and crossing the line, we had done it. Last to P10, and some really nice points for the championship, especially after being massively on the back foot after round 1 and the disqualification race. There was one last race left, and this time we were starting right at the front in P10. Well, it's not really the front, but with the big guns of the pros anyway. The main goal this time was to keep it clean and just see how long I can last at the front. Starting once again next to Nathan Maximum, who also had a brilliant race, starting next to me and ending P7. Sometimes it just pays off starting from the back. But luckily this time the start was fine, as we were led away by Josh Ladd, Williams Esport Pro, and I get a terrible start not anticipating when he was going, leaving the door open to Matthew Shawnee, who tries to go on the outside from me, but luckily I hold off both of them behind me for the time being anyway. Getting into the next section, and a massive crash happens, taking out 2 cars already, promoting us to P8 now, which was absolutely awesome. Next up was trying to get to Lawrence Vines, hoping to make up as many places as possible on lap 1. He gets a slower exit out of the hairpin than the first chicane, as I get a good exit and take a lunge in my overtaking spot, making it stick once again, and by the end of lap 1, I've made it into P7 thanks to the overtake and also collisions that had happened up ahead. Now onto lap 2, I am hunting down David Whitehouse, the 3rd place intermediate driver, and whilst closing up on him, he makes a mistake on the hairpin, cooking his rear brakes and spins it completely, giving us another position, promoting us to now P6, which I did not expect at all. Crossing the line, however, I suddenly was promoted to P5 somehow. No idea why or who went out, but we are in the top 5, which was absolutely insane to me, and once again Double Dash guys noticed and gave me a nice little praise live on the stream.
Look at Matthew Salmon. Matt Salmon is up to 5th place. What a drive from Matt Salmon. This is David Whitehouse on your screens up in 9th place. I think he's just trying to hold in there going, nobody hit me, nobody hit me, nobody hit me, just please leave me alone.
Brilliant stuff to say, Andrew, from Matt Salmon. Here he is running in 5th place, and how has he played himself back into this one? That is very impressive.
But Sam Sanders, one of the really fast drivers, was right on my tail, and I thought about defending like mad from him. But honestly, I just wanted to stay near the front, and if I let him through, I could get a nice slipstream and try and follow him for a while. So I just let him through, hoping to just stay in P6 for a while. By lap 5, I was still there on the back of Sam, being only 0.7 behind him, but Matthew Shawnee was quickly closing, being only 0.5 behind with a nice slipstream. I just needed to stay close to Sam to make sure his slipstream helped me defend from Matthew behind. Coming up to the end of the lap, however, Nathan Maximum suddenly appeared after spinning, and there was nowhere to overtake him at this stage, meaning my gap to Sam was gone and Matthew was right on my back. Luckily, I stayed close to Nathan for a bit, keeping Matthew off once again, but it was only a matter of time before he got me, being only 0.3 behind and making regular lunges on the back straight. But by the main straight, my time was up as he was flying on the main straight and braver on the brakes, taking me into turn 1. I tried to get him back, but it's no use as I am pushed back to P7, which is still good, but I was still a little bit annoyed. On lap 8, going into the weird chicane section, an accident happens up ahead as Ross Steele is sent spinning, bringing it back on track, almost taking out Matthew, but we gain a position. Then again, he was so fast that he would be back within a few laps and my nice P6 would be gone again, but I didn't really mind. Ross was so much faster, and by lap 10, he got me after setting the fastest lap of a 136.7, which was absolutely insane to me. To put it into context, I was lapping in the low 138s at this point, and exactly 138 actually, which I still felt was good pace to have. And by lap 11, however, I noticed that Murray Adams, who had been 6 seconds behind me, was suddenly catching me rapidly and now was right on my back. I hadn't dropped off of Matthew though, I was still within a second of him. Murray was just so fast and I needed to try and get him to slow Matthew down by battling him, and then I could take advantage of that. On lap 12, Murray got me on the long straight and there was nothing I could really do to defend from him. I just had to hope he reeled in Matthew, who was now 1.7 seconds down the road, and hopefully they would battle each other so much that I could catch them and find a gap. And at the end of lap 14, they were fighting each other, with Matthew putting up a good defense. I was just chilling in P7 with a nice 6-second gap behind me, also lapping in the mid 137s at this point. Lap 15, however, Murray got him, but now had him in the mirrors. I was getting closer, but both were very fast ahead, about 5/10 faster, and on the long straight, Matthew got a big run on him, but was forced wide by Murray and lost a ton of time, and then almost lost the car, bringing me right up to his bumper, trying to find a way to get around him, but he was very defensive and hard to pass. It was now the last lap and it was the fight for P6, and I wanted to get him so badly here. He was weaving on the main straight and stayed ahead into turn 1, but coming up to the long right-hander, I didn't realize he wanted the toe on the straight, so I lunged on the inside as he broke early, and I almost lose the car, losing tons of momentum, and he gets me on the straight again. I tried to get a switch back on him, but it doesn't work. Try again going on the inside, but so scared of touching him, and then go on for a late break switchback, but it doesn't work. He is defending like Alonso at Hungaroring, and by the last bend, he does it. He gets P6, and a great job by him. I get P7, which I was so happy with, especially considering we were disqualified in race 1 and had to start from the back. Honestly, it was such a great race as it got me P3 in the intermediates for the last race finish, and now up to P17 in the drivers, which considering I've had 3 back of the grid finishes, I thought was pretty good. But honestly, I absolutely love this track. It's so much fun in the Formula Fords, and despite not doing many actual overtakes to show you, I was so happy with my performances, setting solid, consistent lap times and no real problems on the track like spins or anything. Next up would be Laguna Seca, which is going to be utter carnage, especially with the corkscrew bend. But I'll be ready doing some practice sessions and hopefully we can have another good result. But I'll be documenting what happens here on this channel and I hope you can join me for it. But that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this review of the race and what happened within them. And make sure you check out the live stream on the 13th of March if you want to see it unfiltered, or just subscribe to the channel to make sure you see what happens from my perspective. But yeah, that is all for now. Thank you guys for watching and I'll catch you on the track out there.